Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the fine program. I am your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Logic, at a brand new time, 8 p.m. What's he thinking? I might even move it up to 7:30. I don't know. I'm gonna see. I might be moving it up to 7:30. We'll have to see. 8 o'clock seems doable. 8 o'clock seems doable. I don't know. 7:30. It's 5 p.m. in the West Coast. I know. So like it's like, hey, good morning. Good morning, California. Good evening, everyone else. Why is this horrible? Don't tell me it's horrible. It's not horrible. This is good. Change is good. Just wait. You'll see. I have a special surprise for you. Okay. I have a special surprise for you. Those of you who made the effort to come out here early. I have a special surprise. That surprise is this. I actually want to share with you an audio recording, which is to my mind, the strongest evidence that Trump is not on the list. Certainly not on the list. We are going to be talking about a lot of things here related to what, and obviously I'm referring to the Epstein list when I say that. We're going to be talking a lot about, this is going to be an Epstein show, because someone referred to this as a tar. I don't know if I can say this on YouTube without getting dinged. A baby covered in tar. That's what they called it. A baby covered in tar. That every time you touch it, there's just more, it's just more spread. There's just more spread. And I'm not going to kid you. When I saw what Trump wrote on True Social, and we'll go through it in just a moment. It's the second link I have up for you guys. When I saw what he put on True Social, I was, what's the word? Gobsmacked. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? No. Oh my gosh, no, this is terrible. This is really, really terrible. I have grave doubts that he will ever reverse course on this. But who knows? Who knows? He's caved to pressure, and we see some inclinations, references, Lara Trump, something. I think going to try and give some scraps of information. We're getting things like so many conflicting messages from our DOJ and FBI. And I want to break this. So what I plan on doing for you is with this is I want to give you some updates as to what's been going on over the last couple of days, including leading up to today, developments in this ongoing saga of, will we ever get real final conclusion? Will there ever be closure on this Epstein deal? Will we ever have closure? And I'm also want to go through what I saw as being the best research breakdown for those of you, because a lot of you hear Epstein, you have general ideas as to what was happening there. The best breakdown as to exactly what happened with Epstein and exactly what the story is with Epstein. And I think this is important because there's so many theories that are going on out there as to exactly what it is that he did, and what was the nature of his crimes. And I do think we can categorize them into two different types of activity. One type of activity relates to his own personal depravity, and the other type relating to the nature of the depravity that he is encouraging others to engage in or offering up to others. And I think those are two different types of depravity. And I have absolutely no doubt at all that he was his own biggest customer. I think there's so much evidence as to how much he was a consumer of his own depravity that I think it's hard to even imagine that anyone came close to his level of depravity as far as personal use. And we're going to talk about what evidence there is that he extended beyond him. Why we should believe that he extended beyond him. And I also want to spend some time talking about the various foreign agencies that are brought up and what we know and what we don't know and how we can sort of compartmentalize those pieces of evidence to at least reach a conclusion that's based on knowledge rather than just people saying. A lot of people are saying, there's a lot of people saying a lot of things. And I don't think that that's healthy. So what I'd like to do is I want to break it down into something that's a little bit more digestible. And as I mentioned, I plan on sharing with you the most exonerating evidence. And I'm also going to talk about newest update with Ghislaine Maxwell, which there's a couple of updates that came out just today regarding Ghislaine Maxwell. I want to break that down for you. So that's how I plan on addressing. That's how I plan on breaking this down for you. I really want to do that deep dive with you into what he actually did, because I think that's important so we can understand the gravity of what he was doing. I might have to carve some of it out for YouTube. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. We'll see. Master Phillips, 100% in support of time change. This is the king of recruitment. He's 100% in support of the time change. That's a heady vote. That's a heady vote right there. Hey, happy birthday. Happy birthday. And yeah, I would agree with that sentiment. Do you think Maxwell will be truthful if she sits in front of Congress? No. No. But I do think she'll be reluctant to say something that she thinks can be disproven. And then, so to the extent that she might be stretching or straining the truth, I think that we can sort of, we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure a lot of people will question whether or not she can tell the truth. She has talked about Master Phillips, king of recruitment, my guy over here. Look at this guy hitting with 20. You're not going to hear it yet because I didn't add the thing. 20 good logic memberships. God bless. And 20 new members of the following. What the hell am I talking about? 20 new members of the following. Welcome to the following. Who'd you bring on in here? The following people brought in to the following, courtesy of King Recruitment Master Phillips. That includes Renee Collins, Nancy Lorenz, Donald Young, Fun Size, Mr. K, Steffi. When you hear your name, this means you've been brought into the following, courtesy of our King of Recruitment, Master Phillips, Blue Sky, Pitty Pignatelli, Chadwick Myers, Rob Allen Jr., Vince Olshove, Queen Bee, Mr. Fix-It, Q Revere, KZ, C. Souter, Kathy Chanette, Rebecca Anderson, Ice Cut, and DW3. Welcome to the following. God bless you. Please be aware if you're a new member of the following is not at all a cult type of cult. It's just a group of like-minded individuals who get together for purposes of greater personal growth. And we should all be seeking that, obviously. Let's start off with, we all know the memo came out last week basically saying he didn't self-delete and there was no list. That's what the memo said. And people, when it first came out, were like, it's not signed. Is this real? We don't know if it's real. Well, the next day it came out, it was real. That's what came out. They said it was real. This is just giving you a catch-up in case you've been living in a cave for the last week, a quick overview. And Carolyn Leavitt, press secretary, said, oh, yeah, it's real. You have questions, talk to the DOJ about it. Someone asked a question to Pam Bondi when there was a cabinet meeting that the press was attending. And Pam Bondi was there together with President Trump. And a reporter asked Pam Bondi about the fact that she had said, hey, I've got the list on my thing. I've got the list. I've got this Epstein list on my desk. And now in this new memo, there is no list. What the heck do you make of that? Also, they shared a link to a video that's supposed to be the camera outside his cell, or the hallway to his cell. It's not his cell, the hallway to his cell. And there was a 1-minute gap in there. So they were asking questions about that. And when they were asking these questions, Trump was like, why are you bothering her with these questions? No one cares about this, which was very strange and not at all a healthy read as to what the situation is. That's a very poor read about the situation on the ground, which made me ask a lot of questions. It made a lot of us ask questions. Like, why would you try? And he's like, you don't have to answer. I mean, you can if you want. And she's like, no, I'll answer it. And she gave an answer that was not deemed satisfactory to most people. I saw people likening it to that beauty pageant contestant saying, "I think people should have maps because maps are good and maps learn." I don't think it was quite that dumb an answer. I saw the humor in what they were trying to do there. But then we heard talk about there being internal dissension between the DOJ and the FBI. I heard claims that Dan Bongino was threatening to quit unless Pam Bondi was fired, unless she left because he was upset with her, and that they didn't like the way this was released, or that no one's signature was on the memo. So we don't even know who put it out there, but it was implied it came from the FBI, and Dan Bongino was ticked off about this. And there's all this talk about this. And Todd Blanche, who's deputy attorney general. So you have the FBI and the DOJ. Now, DOJ is technically over the FBI. They direct the FBI what to do. So Pam Bondi is director of the DOJ. Her number 2 is Todd Blanche. Kash Patel is director of the FBI. His number 2 is Dan Bongino. So Dan Bongino allegedly has said that he wants her fired. And I even saw talk that Kash said that if Dan Bongino quits, he's quitting. We don't know what's going on. There's just chaos going on here. Well, Todd Blanche weighed in over the weekend. And when he weighed in, he made clear that in his opinion, there's no dissension here there's not like there's a disagreement between these parties as to the nature of what was written in that. And this made things even more confusing, I think. I work closely with FBI Director Kash Patel and Dan Bongino on the joint FBI and DOJ memo regarding the Epstein files. All of us signed off on the contents of the memo and the conclusions stated in the memo. So we're all on the same page here, he's saying. The suggestion by anyone that there was any daylight between the FBI and DOJ leadership on the memo's composition release is patently false. Okay. All right. That's what we got on Friday. Yeah, Friday, July 11th. Okay. And then we got this from Trump. And when I saw this, like I said, gobsmacked. I'm like, I was just like, what the hell is happening here? What the hell is happening here? Donald Trump wrote this craziness. Now, understand, we've just been told there is no list. Stop talking about it. That's what Donald Trump told us. There is no list. Stop talking about it. Leave us alone. Go away. Go away. So he puts this out. What's going on with my boys and in some cases gals? They're going after Attorney General Pam Bondi. Yeah, everyone's screaming that she needs to be fired. Who's doing a fantastic job. We're one team. We're on one team, MAGA, and I don't like what's happening. Okay, you might not like what's happening. A lot of people don't like what's happening here, Donald. We don't like it. We have a quote, an all caps perfect administration, the talk of the world, and selfish people are trying to hurt it all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. I don't think it's selfish people. I think it's people who are basically saying you promised us something and now you're not holding through on your promise. For years, it's Epstein over and over again. Why are we giving publicity to files written by Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and the losers and criminals of the Biden administration who connect the world with Russia hoax, 51 intelligence agents, the laptop from hell, and more? So what? You were the one who told us about Epstein. Now you're trying to say this whole thing is they created the Epstein files? Just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele dossier that they used on me, and now their so-called friends are playing right into their hands. They created the files? What? We didn't think there were files. The reason we thought there were files is because this clearly was an intelligence operation. I don't even know what that means. I don't even understand this sentence. This sentence makes no sense. And it seems desperate. It seems terrible. I don't even know what he's thinking when he's writing this. I know this doesn't, there's no way. I'm sorry. They didn't create files. They didn't create this. This seems like just desperate hurling. Desperate hurling. And I'm sorry. You guys know how much I love and respect Donald Trump. I don't know what this sentence is. Why didn't these radical left lunatics release the Epstein files? If there's anything, and I usually understand what he's trying to say. I usually can be like, okay, he says this, but I think he means this. I got nothing here. I got nothing. Do you? Any of you? Can any of you explain this sentence? It's not like it's a report that people have seen the files that you're saying those were fake and that was created. I don't even know what he's saying. I have no idea what he's trying to say. If there was anything in there that could have hurt the MAGA movement, why didn't they use it? Okay. They haven't even given up on John F. Kennedy. They haven't even given up on John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. files. I don't know what this means either. No matter how much success we've had securing the border, deporting criminals, fixing the economy, energy dominance, and safer world where Iran will not have nuclear weapons, it's never enough for some people. No, that's not the issue. That's not the issue. It's not that it's never enough for some people. And we are all very, very grateful for the amazing work Trump has done for 6 months. We're all very, very grateful for that. The reason this is such a huge issue is because Jeffrey Epstein represents the deep state. Jeffrey Epstein represents that there are nefarious actors in DC that you are supposed to be ferreting out. And when you tell us we're not ferreting them out and we're going to give cover for people who are conducting some of them or whitewashing some of the most evil activity imaginable, that makes us feel as if you're not rooting out the deep state. So while we might appreciate all the work you're doing on the border, which is amazing, all the stuff you're doing to try to fix the economy, which is really good, all the stuff you're doing trying to deport criminals, which I think is also very nice effort, and I hope it only intensifies. Safer world with Iran, which I think was amazing. The EOs he's put out, the policies, amazing. But this statement, that's not the point. The point is that we're hoping that this is a change, that this is a new world we're living in now, that DC is not being controlled by people. And the fact that this is something that must remain discreet rather than there being accountability is a terrible sign as to that the beast is still very, very, very vibrant inside DC. And that you can be, and that your own people can be co-opted by them. Your own people can become their puppets. People who we thought were uncorruptible in Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, people who we're putting our utmost confidence in Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, these people who we have all this trust and confidence in are telling us not to believe our lying eyes. It's as if they're the new reporters, the new legacy media is saying, they're screaming, "Let's go, Brandon," when you hear everyone screaming, F Joe Biden. That it's like, don't believe, stop believing your lying eyes. Trust me, bro. Don't believe your lying eyes. And we're not going to show you our work. We don't want to show you our work. Just trust us. That's the exact opposite of everything that was promised here. We're about to achieve more in 6 months than any administration achieves in over 100 years, and we have so much more to do. We're saving our country and making America great again. These are all commendable, which will continue to be our complete priority, and it is really commendable. And I mean that sincerely. The left is imploding. I agree with you on that also. There's no reason for this. This is so bad. We could bury the Democrats if this thing is fixed up properly. The Democrats are cooked. So why not fix it? Kash Patel and the FBI must be focused on investigating voter fraud, political corruption, Act Blue, the rigged and stolen election of 2020, and the arresting thugs and criminals instead of spending month after month looking at nothing but the same old radical left-inspired documents on Jeffrey Epstein. You talked about Jeffrey Epstein over and over. That's not radical inspired. This is Trump inspired. And this makes me feel like you're gaslighting me on this. Let Pam Bondi do her job. She's great. That I have questions on. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen. They tried to do the same thing in 2024. That's what she's looking into as AG and much more. 1 year ago, our country was dead. Now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world. Let's keep it that way and not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, someone that nobody cares about. And this, don't tell me we don't care about this. He got only 42,000 likes on this. And the kickback he got on this statement breaks my heart. All due respect, Mr. President, we voted for a change, and big part of change, transparency and accountability. We want the elite P words exposed. You promised us that. Pam Bondi promised us that. Cash promised us that. Now it's our fault because we want that promise fulfilled and call Pam out every time she lies. What else has she lied to us about? Yeah. Yeah. We support Trump 100%. That still stands, but those kids need justice. The people who hurt those kids need to be held accountable, and I don't care who they are. It doesn't matter who they are. Whoever hurt those kids needs to be held accountable. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It's not so much in the fact that we care about Jeffrey Epstein. The fact of the matter is we care about children being trafficked. We care about whether children are still being harmed in our country by the elite monsters, any monsters. We voted for transparency. That's what we need from your boys, and in some cases, gals. Please, sir. It's all respectful. Everyone here is respectful. These are people who love him. These are people who are huge fans and very bothered, hurt. My wanting monsters to be punished for their crimes doesn't make me less of a patriot, but more. There's some nobody getting, as almost as many likes as Donald Trump on his own thing. This is going to cost you so many supporters, I being one of them. I've been to multiple rallies and even was there on J6. This is one of the main things that needs fixed. Our two-tiered system of justice needs to end. This just one after another. Why did Pam string us along with Bindergate, calling it phase 1? Then she went on Fox and said the files are on her desk. Then they were in the Sun District of New York. Then it was her telling a nanny at lunch there are tens of thousands of child horribleness. Then it was a presser. Then it was Dr. Prison video and an unsigned and undated memo dropped to Axios. Axios, really? And you think we're the bad guys for questioning and demanding answers? Who's advising you? The people, it's true. The people advising him need to be fired. Everyone killing him on this, and properly so. This was terrible. This is the worst thing he got. Just the worst thing imaginable. You're losing too many in your base. Respectfully, Trump, your base demands the release of the files, all of them. Putting your base down is not going to make this go away. Please pay attention to what we're saying. Everyone is saying that. Everyone. See, this is a big, stupid mistake that a lot of people say. No, she was trafficking and she was helping provide them to Jeffrey Epstein. That's what they basically were saying. Well, anyway, so that's the reaction, and properly so. He deserved to be excoriated for that. That was the worst thing imaginable. Joe, I work for a living. I live in California. I haven't started drinking yet. Jokes come with drinks. I'm not sure I like early, Joe. Okay, I'll tell my employees I have to start drinking at 3. Yes, that's what you need to do. It's summer. It's summer. But, sir, it's summer. I'll give you one of these for that. I'll give you that for that. And I owed, this was for the King of Recruitment. I owed him one of those also. Okay. Oh, where was my, let me make sure I'm checking here. Look at this, over in the ghetto. Breck Nichols, Joe, I can't believe you're still talking about this. Nothing to see here. Move along. These are not the droids you're looking for. These are not the droids you're looking for. Trump gave Fox an interview pre-election, asked about Epstein file release. He qualified his yes concern about false accusations in the files that could still hurt people. See Dershowitz. Still, it's a mess. Okay, well, when we talk about Dershowitz also. And we talking about Dershowitz. We're going to be talking about all of this. In the wake of this, folks like Charlie Kirk are saying things like this, and this is not making people happy.
Honestly, I'm done talking about Epstein for the time being. I'm going to trust my friends. You
don't see that.
Honestly, I'm done talking about Epstein for the time being. I'm going to trust my friends in the administration. I'm going to trust my friends in the government to do what needs to be done, solve it, balls in their hands. I've said plenty this last weekend. So if you guys want to see my commentary on it, that's fine. Honestly, I'm done talking about Epstein for the time.
And I get it. I get it. I understand this take if someone says, I don't want to make my life about Epstein. I get that. I understand. I'm not angry at him for this. I'm really not. I'm not angry at him for this. I do think that him platforming Tucker Carlson and put out those comments, some of the comments Tucker Carlson made there were just asinine. Just completely asinine. But DJT has Dems insisting on disclosure. Why 3D chess? Okay. Yeah. I don't buy that. I will tell you that I just brought up Tucker Carlson. He's basically so many people are convinced that this is Mossad. A lot of people are like, this is clearly Mossad. That's what's happening here. Obviously, hello, this is Mossad. And I'm not willing to rule out Mossad for sure. I won't rule them out. But folks who are saying it's definitively Mossad, I should share with you first Israel's position on this, this is Naftali Bennett, who's a former prime minister. And he says, as a former Israeli prime minister with the Mossad having reported directly to me, I say to you with 100% certainty, the accusation that Jeffrey Epstein somehow worked for Israel and the Mossad running a blackmail ring is categorically and totally false. Epstein's conduct, both the criminal and the merely despicable, had nothing whatsoever to do with the Mossad or the state of Israel. Epstein never worked for the Mossad. This accusation is a lie being peddled by prominent online personalities such as Tucker Carlson, which that is part of what he was throwing out there in his Turning Point USA thing. Pretending they know things that they don't. This just makes they just make things up, say with confidence, and these lies stick because it's Israel. It's a vicious way of slander and lies against my country and my people, and we just won't take it anymore. And I think it was a smart thing for him to say. For them to sit silently on this, a lot of people are going to say, you're a liar, your pants are on fire. And I can understand people saying that because, if Chris Wray came out and said that he had nothing to do with the FBI, or, the head of the CIA, and they told us, under the prior administration, anything that he wasn't part of American intelligence, we wouldn't trust them either. So I don't think there's anything wrong with people questioning whether or not he's lying. You probably never even heard of this guy before. So, or many of you probably never heard of him before. So you just say, okay, he's Israeli State Department saying he's not there. But at the very least, for them to make a public statement about his position, I think is a wise move on Israel's part. For them, if they sit silently, that's not helpful. So at least for them to say, look, he got nothing. He's not ours. He's not one of ours. That's a wise move on their part to do that rather than sitting mutely. Because if you sit mutely, then people are like, yeah, they came in, they didn't even try to deny it. So you have to at least deny it, and some will believe you and some will not. And I don't know whether or not to believe him. Viva Frei has questions. And what his questions are, they're two very simple questions. Why was Ehud Barak visiting Epstein dozens of times after it was known that Epstein was a child abuser? Now, Ehud Barak is another former Israeli prime minister. He was prime minister in 2000, from the late 90s up to 2001. Also, why was Mossad at Robert Maxwell's funeral? And he tasks, and as Viva will do, intelligently and properly, he said, here you have Ehud Barak meeting with Jeffrey Epstein dozens of times, flew on his private plane. Former Prime Minister visited disgraced financier and child abuser about 30 times between 2013 and 2017, including 2014 private flight in Florida. Okay, so that's questions about definitely it's documented Ehud Barak was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, his former Prime Minister of Israel. But the timing here on this, let's address this claim first. The timing here is 2013 to 2017, which is a dozen years after he's working for the Israeli government. In fact, they even end up forming a business deal together, forming a company together. I don't remember what it was called. I'll ask Grok to give us a breakdown on that. So this way we can all, take my word for it. Let's go to Grok. Did Jeff Epstein ever a business deal? Yes, Epstein and Barak did enter a business deal. In 2015, Barak formed a limited partnership company in Israel called Sum 2015 to invest in a high-tech startup then called Reporting, now known as Carbine, which develops video streaming and geolocation software for emergency services. A significant portion of the funds used by Sum to repurchase Reporting stock was provided by Epstein. So it's not like, now, does that mean that he wasn't a client of his? No. Should he be dealing with someone who at that point, now it's 2013, was convicted, registered sex offender, which he was as part of his plea deal? No, I think this is stupid. But is Ehud Barak the Israeli government at this point? No. And the question I would say is, do you think, we know Jeffrey Epstein was hanging out with Bill Clinton at this time. Is that a sign that the American government was working with Jeffrey Epstein? Now, I believe that they probably were working with Jeffrey Epstein, but I don't draw that conclusion based on the fact that Bill Clinton was hanging out with them, because it was similarly, Bill Clinton was, I think, in 2007 or so is when he was doing it, and it was 7 years after he was president. So if it's years after he was president, I don't attribute that back to the American government. And similarly, when I see Ehud Barak is working with him, I don't understand how that gets attributed back to Mossad or the Israeli government. So that was the first question he asked. And the second question he asked was about Robert Maxwell. A lot of you some of you may know Robert Maxwell, some of you may not. Robert Maxwell is a British Jew who, I agree, was probably he was a member of Mossad, Robert Maxwell. In Israel, when he died in 1991, November 11th, 1991, and at his funeral, publisher Robert Maxwell today was given a funeral befitting a national hero by Israel, the country with which he developed an intimate and sometimes controversial relationship in the last 3 years of his life. That's in 1991. Ghislaine Maxwell is his daughter. Ghislaine Maxwell, I don't know whether or not she's ever worked for Mossad. I have no idea. Naftali Bennett did not, I don't see him mentioning anything about whether or not Ghislaine Maxwell worked for Mossad. So I don't know that she did. But the fact that the point that I made to Viva is, there's a lot of MLB players who have sons in the major leagues, but most of them don't. So you want to tell me that because Robert Maxwell is a Mossad agent, that means that she's also a Mossad agent? Okay, I mean, you can maybe it's hard to believe that during the last months, maybe during the last months of his life, he died suddenly. He died of a heart attack that he had while he was swimming off of his yacht, and I think drowned. He had a heart attack and drowned while he was swimming off of his yacht, this guy, Robert Maxwell. So, and some people speculate that he was killed. But the so I wouldn't rule out. Now the other basis that people throw in there as to why it is that he's clearly Mossad is because they talk about all of Epstein's ties to people who have Jewish names. And I don't understand that either, unless you're going to tell me that every Jew is a Mossad. I've never been a Mossad. I'm Jewish. I've never been the Mossad. So that's, to me, that's like saying anyone who has an Italian name is in the mafia. It's pretty ridiculous. So, and when I hear people making that argument, I'm like, okay, you have a predetermined conclusion you want to get to, that specifically Mossad is involved here. And again, I want to be clear. I don't know. Maybe he was working for Mossad. I just think that these are dots which never came up while he was alive, only came up after he was dead. No one was saying Mossad in 2007, 2009, no, 2012, 2015, 17. It first came up after he was dead. And I'm just like, okay, look, I understand why people want to say that. I don't know that he's not. I just think that I can make a case to you that he's part of FSB from Russia. Supposedly, a lot of the girls who went to who were working there were young Russian girls, like Russian athletes. And I can give you names of people that he worked with who were part of working for the Russian embassy. The sad thing is that we don't know anything, and it's frustrating for everyone involved. Maybe he's working for the CIA. Maybe he's working for the FBI. Maybe he's working for all of them. I don't know. I wouldn't rule that out either. And that's why I'm just so, it's very frustrating for everyone. But I do think it's important for us to know a little bit more about Jeffrey Epstein. And I do, and the point that I was trying to make for the last several minutes is that when people say this, this is something we do know about him, I think they're full of crap for the most part. I think they don't. I think there's very little we know about him. We have a general idea of what he did in this incident with these people, and what we've seen of him is depraved and disgusting and awful and evil. But we have a lot more questions than we have answers to on the life of Jeffrey Epstein, which is far more interesting than his death. I'm going to go through this breakdown of his life, though, and because this seems very well researched background as to what the heck happened, what was his life was like. This was written before he died. This was written while Jeffrey Epstein was alive. Did any of the victims claim that they were only around to give massages to Epstein? From what I remember, they said multiple people. Were they lying? So we'll talk about. You're going to see that in this article, and we're going to go through this. It's a long article. We're going to go through it. Have you ever seen any of Whitney Webb's work on Epstein? She wrote 2 books and did great interviews on Glenn. Was a great interview on Glenn Beck 2 years ago that he just reposted. I had not seen that. No, I'll try to check it out though. No one offered a plea deal to Maxwell for cooperation. Why? Because they wanted the whole Epstein thing to just go away. Yes, I pulled the trigger. I agree with you. I think offering her a deal makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And it's very suspect that she hasn't been offered any deal. And I have to think that's purposeful, right? The public is demanding. We want to know these names. And this is the point that I want to get to before I get into this breakdown. Let's assume that, I think it's a fair assumption. I don't think anyone who's watching me now would say that they're shocked by the notion that whatever file there was on Epstein and what he was doing, working for the FBI, or CIA, Mossad, MI6, FSB, whoever it is that he was associated with, whatever files the FBI had on this, likely burned by Merrick Garland and Chris Wray. Likely burned by them, destroyed, vaulted away where Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi were not going to find anything remotely useful. And the only thing left there are these stupid, hideous videos of children and nothing that's actually beneficial towards showing anything other than his own disturbing predilections, but nothing showing that he was related to any intelligence agency, nothing showing who he provided services to, nothing showing who he's extorting or blackmailing, nothing of that kind. Let's assume, I think that everyone can agree that that makes sense. Probably some people there decided this is a good thing to hide from the Trump administration, which is why now they come in there and they're like, well, there's for what the evidence we see here, it looks like this was kind of a nothing burger beyond his own personal depravity. That's all fine. That's all fine. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, President Trump. Here's the thing, Pam Bondi. Here's the thing, Kash Patel. I got no problem with you guys saying that when we went through the files and we dug around and we dug and went through this file, that file, this file, that file, we found nothing. Okay. All right. You're the freaking FBI. Why is this case closed? Go be cops. I'm quoting you back to yourself, Kash Patel. Go be cops. Go talk to Alex Acosta, who cut him a deal, as we're going to see. Go talk to the victims. Find out what names of people. Find out who they were servicing beyond Jeffrey Epstein. Talk to the agents who were working around then. Talk to Alan Dershowitz. Talk to Alan Dershowitz, because this is what Dershowitz says. You want to see what Dershowitz says? Here's what Dershowitz says while Pam Bondi is telling us that there's no list. Here's what Alan Dershowitz is saying about that.
I tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God, I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them. And that's wrong.
Just out of curiosity, without names, are these politicians, business leaders, both?
They're everything. And let me tell you, a lot of them are, at least one of them is somebody who was accused. Others are accusers. And
Prince Andrew.
And the judges have said, if somebody calls themselves a victim, we're not going to give any information about them. But they may not be victims. They may be perpetrators. So we don't have information about false accusers. And we know there have been many false accusers who have accused innocent people for money, and those records are being deliberately, willfully suppressed, and they shouldn't be suppressed. If the accusation is allowed out, so should the material that diminishes the credibility of the accuser. We want total transparency on this. Every single document, no redaction. That's what I've said from day one. I waive any of my rights to privacy. Anything there is about me, I'm happy, because it will be exculpatory. Because I know I haven't touched a woman other than my wife from the day I met Jeffrey Epstein. I don't even hug people, but I was falsely accused and I was able to prove it. And I was able to prove it through documents. And I want other people to be able to disprove false accusations through documents. But these documents are being suppressed and withheld.
Kash Patel, go be cops. You can put pressure on him in order to get a court order and have him break this attorney-client privilege. And who's the attorney-client privilege in this context even designed to protect? It's Jeffrey Epstein, who's dead. It's Jeffrey Epstein, who's dead. Normally, I wouldn't like the idea of an attorney being pressured into breaking attorney-client privilege. But here, the privilege is extending to a dead guy. So, yeah. I'd be like, I think I'm okay with the government in this context putting pressure on him to compel him to testify and get a court order in order to compel him to testify and tell us what he knows. Go be cops, Kash Patel. Don't tell me this case is closed. Go be cops, Dan Bongino. Don't tell me this case is closed. Pam Bondi, you're in charge of the FBI. Tell them, don't tell me the case is closed. Go out there and tell them to go be cops. We have a guy here who has answers. Why is no one talking to Ghislaine Maxwell? Why don't we hear anything? Why is it that no one is taught? Why is it that she's not offered a plea deal? Supposedly, she's perfectly happy to come out and testify. That's what we hear. Perfectly happy to come out and testify. Now, do I think we can trust her? No. But it's a starting point. See what she says, and then see if it can be corroborated. Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, is ready to reveal truth of the P client list, say insiders. So why are Republicans blocking her? Ghislaine Maxwell is willing to speak in front of Congress about the Epstein files, sources tell the Daily Mail. Maxwell, 63, is the only person behind bars serving 20 years on the child sex trafficking charges, despite the fact that Jeffrey Epstein allegedly controlled a web of underage girls. Additionally, Epstein's victims allege that they were passed around as toys to his wealthy friends and billionaire business associates who regularly visited his homes, including his private island, Little St. James. Now, a source said, despite rumors, Ghislaine was never offered any kind of plea deal. She would be more than happy to sit before Congress and tell her story. No one from the government has ever asked her to share what she knows. She remains the only person to be jailed in connection to Epstein, and she would welcome the chance to tell the American public the truth. What that truth is remains to be seen. Maxwell was convicted in 2022 over her role in a scheme to exploit and abuse multiple minor girls with Epstein over the course of a decade, primarily from between 94 to 2004. That was the decade that she was supposedly helping him do that. That's her in prison. Maxwell argues she should have been protected from prosecution as part of a non-prosecution agreement made by Epstein, her former lover and boss, in 2007, when he agreed to plead guilty to 2 minor charges for prostitution in a sweetheart deal which saw him spend little time behind bars. And now, controversy continues to rage over the DOJ's statement that there is no Epstein client list and release of videos from inside New York's Metropolitan Correctional Center, which the DOJ says he proves he self-deleted in 2019 while being held in jail on trafficking charges. Critics have pointed to the fact that there's a crucial minute missing from the jailhouse video. To me, that crucial minute is a red herring. I think that's a red herring. I think the video is not trained in anywhere that's really useful. Because that, to me, I struggle to understand how it is when you consider that he's found hanging, and that I struggle to see how it is that when in a span of 60 seconds, people are darting in there, assassinating him, and staging it to look like self-deletion. No one hears anything, and getting out within 60 seconds. To me, that seems impossible. I don't buy it. So I think that that's a red herring. I think it's a purposeful red herring to make people look foolish. So I never put any stock in the crucial minute. And to me, I guess it kind of makes sense that, if it's some outdated surveillance video, that the clock is going, the missing minutes goes like this. It's 11:58 and 54 seconds, 55 seconds, 56 seconds, 57, 58, 59, and then it goes from what should be 11:59 p.m. It just jumps to 12 a.m. To me, that's not anything. I don't see how all of that could have been done silently. You have to know that the video is also off during that time. It doesn't make sense to me. It's much more likely that the whole video is AI and it's garbage than that 1 minute. The video to me is not dispositive of anything. I'm just saying that you don't need to turn and focus on that 1 minute to show that the video isn't proof of anything. You sent me something from my DM started 30:30. What did you send me? So let me see. You sent me. Okay. There's a whole bunch of somethings there. The real reason we'll never see the Epstein list? I assume that's what you want me to say. Alex Acosta, investigator, says in 2007 he was told to leave it alone because Epstein belonged to intelligence. I'm coming to that very soon. You're correct. You're correct. He does. But whose intelligence? An early Joe stream. Like the stream. Subscribe. We need a like and subscribe poll for every stream. He told me that. He's told me that before. I can do that now. I'll do that. Not really sure. All right. There's your poll. Okay. What do we got? What do we got? Let me make sure I'm not missing anything in the ghetto. Searching the ghetto. We're good here. Okay. The scandal and alleged cover-up has prompted a rebellion amongst President Trump's loyal MAGA base. Some even believe Attorney General Pam Bondi should be fired after promising to release all files relating to Epstein and his high-profile male friends, only to apparently renege on that promise. On Saturday night, President Trump posted a rebuttal to accusations of cover-up on social media, saying, "For years, it's Epstein over and over again. We're not giving publicly to files written by Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and losers." That doesn't even make any sense. How would they be writing the files? I don't even know what that means. Stone says about this whole issue of Ghislaine Maxwell testifying. Roger Stone says that he welcomes reports that Ghislaine Maxwell might be willing to testify to Congress about her ties to Jeffrey Epstein. He said that she has nothing on Trump, pushing back on speculation that Maxwell's testimony can implicate the president. So, and I want to share with you before I go into the lengthy breakdown there. I want to share with you this audio clip. This is an audio clip of Jeffrey Epstein's former cellmate. Jeffrey Epstein's former cellmate talking about conversations he had with Jeffrey Epstein about Donald Trump before Epstein went bye-bye.
So he got up, he got dressed, he left. He was gone all day. He came back later that night. Came in, he just climbed on the bunk. He didn't say a word. I was reading a book. It wasn't my business.
Again, this is Jeffrey Epstein's cellmate supposedly talking to him days before Jeffrey Epstein perished.
And finally, he said, you were a cop. What do you know about proffers and cooperating? I told him, I said, Jeff, it's pretty simple. That the the prosecutors, they caught a fish. They're not going to let that fish off the hook unless you give them a bigger fish. He said, yeah, well, that's what they said. I said, what do you mean? He said, they told me to let me plead out for something small, and I'll do just a couple of years in a camp if I can give them something on Trump, get him impeached. And
Jeffrey, so this is Nicholas Tartaglione, who he's an ex-Westchester cop who is a convicted killer. Was cellmate of, and that's why he's in this cell. It's a special cell designed for folks who are potential targets of other inmates. As an ex-cop, that's why he would be in his cell. So he said that he claims that Jeffrey Epstein told him that the DOJ told him, this is in 2019. Trump's own DOJ told him, give us stuff to help get Trump impeached, and we'll cut you a deal.
I said, well, do you know Trump? He says, well, I know him, I met him, but we don't like each other. I laughed. I said, why? He said, Trump threw me out of a party at his place in Florida. Somebody threw you out. He said, oh, he got mad. I was talking to some girl. And by now I got wind of, what he was in there for. So I said, well, how old was the girl, Jess? He said, oh, about 18, 19. So I was a cop. I said, Jess, that means probably 14, 15. He said, well, he threw me out, and, I haven't talked to him since, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, I don't know anything. So, okay. He says, but the government told me I don't have to prove what I say about Trump as long as Trump's people can't disprove it. I said, yes. I said, he's the president of the United States.
The DOJ told, in case it's hard for you to hear, the DOJ supposedly told Epstein that they want him to help get Trump impeached. And that it doesn't matter whether or not it's true, as long as it's something that Donald Trump cannot prove to be false.
There's people at the FBI. He said, that's what I said. And they said, no, the FBI is our people, not his people.
FBI is our people, not his people. Wow. This tells me they have nothing. Trump is not on that list. He's like, I got nothing on him. I've got nothing on him. We're not friends anymore. He threw me out because I was talking to a minor. So, yeah. This is why I say to me, this is the most compelling evidence. For those who try to find some reason that, Trump is motivated to hide the list because he's afraid he's on the list or whatever, he's not on that list. He's not on that. My personal opinion is he's not on that. There are other factors here. I agree. I agree with the sentiment that for one reason or another, he's trying to keep that thing buried and he wants this story to go away and that we shouldn't let him just let it go away. But I don't for a second believe that Trump's motivation is that he's trying to protect himself from indictment or humiliation or, being exposed as being some child predator. I think to me that makes no sense at all. No sense at all. Now the left has dreams quite the opposite. Here's Hakeem Jeffries. All of a sudden now finally waking up. Democrats a week into this story are waking up now and coming out.
The American people deserve to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as it relates to this whole sordid Jeffrey Epstein matter. Democrats didn't put the Jeffrey Epstein thing into the public domain. This was a conspiracy.
Yeah, why didn't you? Why? Because Bill Clinton's all over it.
See that Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, and these MAGA extremists have been fanning the flames of for the last several years.
That's true.
And now the chickens are coming home to roost.
That's true too. Because we actually hold our leaders accountable. That's the difference. That we hold our leaders accountable.
The American people deserve to know the truth. What, if anything, is the Trump administration and the Department of Justice hiding?
I agree with this.
What are you hiding? If you're not hiding anything, prove that to the American people. And if you are trying to hide something, as many of Donald Trump's MAGA supporters apparently believe.
What we believe, I'll help walk you through why we believe it.
Then the Congress should actually work hard to try to uncover the truth for the American people. There are only two things that are possible here. Option one, Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, and the MAGA extremists intentionally
MAGA extremists, you're a lunatic.
lied to the American people for years about the Jeffrey Epstein situation.
It wouldn't be intentionally when you're talking about folks from MAGA.
That's option one. Option two is that, in fact, there's reason for the American people to be concerned as it relates to what information has not been released that could be damaging to the Trump administration and the friends and family of the Trump administration and their billionaire corrupt supporters.
Or that's not the only two options. Option three could be that there have been threats made to family members of these people.
And so they're actively engaging in a cover-up. Option one, they lied for years.
Okay, so he's an idiot who's on tilt. Option three is that there's actual physical threats being made to family members of Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, or whomever, which is far scarier. Trump is probably not on the list, but is highly likely some of his donors are. I think that's a fair assessment. I think that's very possible. And frankly, that's a crap excuse. Complete crap excuse. That's that. If that is the motivation, that's shameful. You know, and this is not exclusively MAGA. Check out this poll.
That took a real hit this week when we saw the administration roundly reject pretty much a narrative that Republicans have been believing in for years.
Not just Republicans, literally everybody. Only 21% of Americans think that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. That's less than believe in space aliens. And so that's part of the context. The problem is that their messaging has been all over the place. Like they don't understand why voters are so concerned about this issue.
More people believe in space aliens. That was Mark Mitchell, excuse me. More people believe in space aliens than believe that Epstein self-deleted. Okay, let's get into the research here, because I think that this breakdown, everything, I read through this relatively quickly. It's a very long article. I don't know if we're going to cover all of it. We'll probably skim through parts of it. But everything I saw in this article, and I will link you to it so you can go through it yourself. Everything I saw in this article breaking down Jeffrey Epstein's life and what we know for certain about his life, for the most part, is broken down here. This was done. This was a detailed expose done by Julie Brown, who I think hates Trump, by the way, working for the Miami Herald. How a future, and it's attacking Alex Acosta, who at the time was a future Trump cabinet member. This was, again, she wrote this on November 28, 2018. At the time she writes this, it's 9 months before Epstein perishes. Okay? On a muggy October morning in 2007, Miami's top federal prosecutor, Alexander Acosta, had a breakfast appointment with a former colleague, D.C. attorney Jay Lefkowitz. It was an unusual meeting for the then 38-year-old prosecutor. a rising Republican star who had served in several White House posts before being named U.S. Attorney in Miami by President George W. Bush. Thanks. Instead of meeting at the prosecutor's headquarters, the two men, both with professional roots in the prestigious Washington, in the prestigious, prestigious Washington law firm of Kirkland & Ellis, convened at the Marriott in West Palm Beach, about 70 miles away. For Lefkowitz, 44, a U.S. special envoy to North Korea and corporate lawyer, the meeting was critical. His client, Palm Beach multimillionaire Jeffrey Epstein, who was 54 at the time, was accused of assembling a large cult-like network of underage girls with the help of young female recruiters to coerce into having sex acts behind the walls of his opulent waterfront mansion as often as 3 times a day. The town of Palm Beach police found that was his house in Palm Beach. The eccentric hedge fund manager, whose friends included former Presidents Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and Prince Andrew, was also suspected of trafficking minor girls, often from overseas, for sex parties at his home in Manhattan, New Mexico, and the Caribbean. FBI and court records show. Where's our FBI records? Where's our FBI records? What about these parties? What is that? Where are these records? Now, again, this was written in 2018. And as we're going through this, I'm going to pause for a moment and urge you to consider this throughout. What part is talking about his own personal use versus what part is talking about him providing these girls to third parties? Because you would think, to the extent he's involved as an intelligence operative for some agency, again, FBI, CIA, Mossad, MI6, FSB, whoever it is, or some combination thereof, or some agency I haven't even mentioned, that they would be interested in the third party use, right? They don't care. They would probably be tolerant of his personal use. And his, actually, I don't really like the term, his I don't even like the word use. I like the word abuse better. They're tolerant of his personal abuse for his own depraved pleasures. But what they're really interested in is helping provide his third-party abuse so that this way they can honeypot these sick, wealthy individuals, or powerful individuals. And that's a different part of this whole thing here. That's the part which really has culpability that the deep state is protecting, right? I don't think anyone cares, but it's pretty clear that the deep state doesn't care to protect Jeffrey Epstein for the abuse that he heaped on these girls for his own private gratification. What they're really trying to protect here is the extent that there was abuse that was perpetrated by third parties. And when we're reading this whole expose, it's important to sort of try to figure out what part here is bolstering claims of personal gratification versus third-party abuse. Mexican Army, how you doing? I'm most concerned about the space aliens that might be on the Epstein list. You guys check out Mexican Army, he's great. Joe, can you say human alien hybrids that might be running the global economic cartel as lizard people? We're not talking about Nancy Pelosi tonight. So no, we're not talking about that tonight. She's certainly, I'm positive that I've identified the queen of the lizard people, and it is Nancy Pelosi. Facing a 53-page federal indictment, Epstein could have ended up in federal prison for the rest of his life, and should have. But on the morning of the breakfast meeting, a deal was struck, an extraordinary plea agreement that would conceal the full extent of Epstein's crimes and the number of people involved. Not only would Epstein serve just 13 months in the county jail, but the deal, called a non-prosecution agreement, essentially shut down an ongoing FBI probe into whether there were more victims and other powerful people who took part in Epstein's crimes, according to the Miami Herald examination of thousands of emails, court documents, and FBI records. Why can't they? I mean, maybe those emails have been deleted. Maybe those records, the originals have been destroyed. That's possible. The pact requires Epstein to plead guilty to 2 prostitution charges in state court. Epstein and 4 of his accomplices named in the agreement received immunity. One of them is Ghislaine Maxwell. No one's talking about Ghislaine Maxwell in 2018 because this is before she's arrested. She later gets convicted in 2021. Today, in fact, we saw a response from the government because what was her basis for trying to get out is this deal right here, that she thinks that she's wrongfully convicted because of this deal we're about to read about. Even more unusual, the deal included wording that grants immunity to any potential co-conspirators who were also involved in Epstein's crimes. These accomplices or participants were not identified in the agreement, leaving it open to interpretation whether it possibly referred to other influential people who were having sex with underage girls at Epstein's various homes or on his plane. As part of the arrangement, Acosta, again, this is Alex Acosta, who later becomes labor secretary for Trump during his first administration, agreed, despite a federal law to the contrary, that the deal would be kept from the victims. As a result, the non-prosecution agreement was sealed until after it was approved by the judge, thereby averting any chance that the girls or anyone else might show up in court and to derail it. So they were working really hard to make sure this deal got through. That's a good point, Trumpinator. He did, and probably still does. This is the story of how Epstein, bolstered by unlimited funds and represented by a powerhouse legal team, was able to manipulate the criminal justice system, and how his accusers, still traumatized by their pasts, believed they were betrayed by the very prosecutors who pledged to protect them. Quote, "I don't think anyone has been told the truth about what Jeffrey Epstein did," said one of Epstein's victims, Michelle Luciata, now 30. Quote, "He ruined my life and a lot of girls' lives. People need to know what he did and why he wasn't prosecuted so it never happens again." Now President Trump's Secretary of Labor, Acosta, again, this is 2018, his Secretary of Labor, Acosta, oversees a massive federal agency that provides oversight to the country's labor laws, including human trafficking. Okay, but Acosta also been included on lists of possible replacements for Jeff Sessions. Okay, he didn't respond. He doesn't respond to numerous requests for an interview or answer queries through email. Big surprise there, right? Big surprise that he's not responding to that. That's our schmuck, Alex Acosta, former prosecutor who signed off on this deal. Just to clarify for you, so now that immunity deal, which I believe in the end ended up naming Sarah Kellen and Ghislaine Maxwell, plus any additional co-conspirators, you might ask yourself, if she got this plea deal in 2007, how is it that she was convicted for being involved in helping procure girls between 1995 and 2007, which she was? How does that go through? Judge Allison Nathan from the Southern, at the time she was a judge in the Southern District of New York. The final case of her trial of her career before she went up to the appellate division in the second department was to handle the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. She denied the motion that was brought by Ghislaine Maxwell's Dream Team attorneys when they said, we have to get this thing dismissed because we got immunity. Immunity was granted to us courtesy of Jeffrey Epstein's deal. Allison Nathan ruled, and she cited a number of cases to support this, something that shocked the hell out of me when I read it the first time, which is that when a defendant signs an immunity deal with a particular prosecutor from a particular district, all that binds is his office. So which means that since Alex Acosta was from the Southern District of Florida, the Southern District of Florida now was guaranteeing that they would not prosecute Jeffrey Epstein or his co-conspirators. But Southern District of New York is not bound by that. It's kind of crazy, but there is a lot of case law in this. And that was the ruling, and that's why the trial was allowed to proceed. And it went up to the Second Circuit, and the Second Circuit affirmed and said, yep, that's the law. You sign a deal, defendant signs a deal with prosecutor, it only binds him in that office. It does not have any impact on other judicial districts. So even though the Southern District of Florida gave immunity, That does not protect them from the Southern District of New York. And that's why he was prosecuted in New York. She was prosecuted in New York. And now they're applying for a writ of certiorari to have the Supreme Court overturn that. I don't think it's going to be granted, but I don't know. We'll see. But opposition to that was put in by the government just today. 2 stories involving Ghislaine Maxwell today. One is opposition to her motion, her application for writ of certiorari Supreme Court on this very issue, and 2 is the concept of whether or not she might be given a deal to testify. Lottie Dot, thank you so much for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Good Logic, just send you a breaking news article about Epstein files. Raid my stream when you end tonight, buddy. Let me do that now. Let me set that up now because I will forget otherwise. I'm happy to do that for you. Let me set up a raid. That's going to be under my customization. I don't see the stream here now. Isn't it possible the evidence was held by parties other than Epstein, foreign country? It's possible. But we're going to hear more about the intelligence agencies in this particular article and what role they played previously and how we first heard of intelligence agencies being involved here. And it really comes from one particular statement made by Alex Acosta. Court records revealed details of negotiations and the role that Acosta would play in arranging the deal, which scuttled the federal probe into a possible international sex trafficking operation. Among other things, Acosta allowed Epstein's lawyers unusual freedoms in dictating the terms of the non-prosecution agreement. Quote, the damage that happens in this case is unconscionable, said Bradley Edwards, a former state prosecutor who represents some of Epstein victims. Bradley Edwards represents more of the Epstein victims, I think, than any other lawyer in civil suits. How in the world do you, the U.S. attorney, engage in negotiation with a criminal defendant, basically allowing that criminal defendant to write up the agreement? As a result, that was Bradley Edwards. As a result, neither the victim nor even the judge would know how many girls Epstein allegedly sexually abused between 2001 and 2005. When his underage sex activities were first uncovered by police. Now, you might be saying to yourself, what do you mean 2001, 2005? What the hell is that? What's that? What's that about? So, another thing a legal thing that you're likely unaware of is the statute of limitations. The 3 main crimes that were relevant in this case was prostitution, abuse of a minor, and trafficking of a minor. Prostitution had a 5-year statute of limitations. Abuse and trafficking of minors had 10-year, far more serious crimes, and they had 10-year statute of limitations. We know his crimes going back to like 1994. So you got to ask, why is he focusing on this time? And I'm still a little perplexed about it. But I will tell you this, something you should be aware of. This came up during Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, that the only things the crimes that could be considered were crimes that occurred during a certain window of time. Why is that? Statute of limitation for those now are for the violation, the trafficking of minors and abuse of minors are gone. There are no more. They were extended out until they were abolished. And the way the law works is this. If at the time that the statute has a statute of limitations extended, it can only be extended if the defendant is still within the statute of limitations for the crime on the date that the law goes into effect. So, let's assume a law goes into effect on January 1st, 2006. It had a 10-year statute of limitations. And now we're saying there's no more statute of limitations. That's gone. So what we do basically is we'll look at January 1st, 2006 and say it had a 10-year statute of limitations, which means any activities that were conducted between January 1st, 1996 and 2006, those all were within the statute of limitations at the time that it was extended outward. So anything that was still alive at the time that the statute of limitations is extended outward retains its vitality and now is extended and doesn't die on the 10th anniversary of that activity, but it just now, if it's extended to 20 years, it will go 20 years, or if there is no expiry date on it, then that all the activity that happened between 1996 and 2006 would have no statute of limitations. It can be prosecuted at any time. What about activity that happened in 1995, 94, 93? Since that was already dead at the time that this extension kicks in, it does not get revivified by this extension of time. We don't say, well, the statute says you can go back anytime you want. No. Once something has already perished on the statute of limitations, even if you abolish the statute of limitations, that does not resurrect a right for a prosecutor to go back to something that predates the expiry of the statute of limitations. This is something that came up a lot during the Ghislaine Maxwell trial because there were certain things, activities that Ghislaine Maxwell was involved in that predate the statute of limitations and had died at the time that the statute of limitations had been extended. And Judge Nathan was very careful to make sure that the prosecutors did not allow the jury to use any of the actions that happened prior, the earliest actions that may have expired on the statute of limitations would not rely upon those in order to secure convictions against Ghislaine Maxwell. So that's why that timing period here becomes relevant, I think, because it could be something that the things would have a 5-year statute of limitations. I'm not sure. Police referred this case to the FBI a year later when they began to suspect that their investigation was being undermined by the Palm Beach State Attorney's Office. Quote, this was not a he said, she said situation. This was 50-something she's and one he. 50 different women. And the she's all basically told the same story, said retired Palm Beach Chief Michael Ryder, who supervised the police probe. More than a decade later, at a time when Olympic gymnasts and Hollywood actresses have become a catalyst for cultural reckoning about sexual abuse, Epstein victims have all been forgotten. The women now in their late 20s and early 30s are still fighting for an elusive justice that's even passage of time has not made right. Quote, Jeffrey preyed on girls who were in a bad way, who were basically homeless. He went after girls who he thought no one would listen to, and he was right, said Courtney Wild, who was 14 when she met Epstein. That's her now. Well, 2018. Over the past year, the Miami Herald examined a decade worth of court documents, lawsuits, witness depositions, and newly released FBI documents. Key people involved in the investigation, most of whom had never spoken before, were also interviewed. The Herald also obtained new records, including the full unredacted copy of the Palm Beach police investigation. Apparently, the Herald had more than the FBI did when Cash and Pam Bondi showed up there. The Herald learned that as part of the plea deal, Epstein provided what the government called valuable consideration for unspecified information he supplied to federal investigators. While the documents obtained by the Herald don't detail what the information was, Epstein's sex crime case happened just as the country's subprime mortgage market collapsed, ushering in the 2008 global financial crisis. Records show that Epstein was a key federal witness in the criminal prosecution of two prominent executives with Bear Stearns, the global investment brokerage that failed in 2008, who were accused of corporate securities fraud. So maybe he was helpful in that. I don't know. The Herald also identified about 80 women who said they were molested or otherwise abused by Epstein from 2001, 2006. That's 80 women just during that period of time. 80 during those 5 years. And as I said, his crimes with Ghislaine Maxwell go back into the early 90s. About 60 of them were located now scattered across the country and abroad. 8 of them agreed to be interviewed on or off the record. 4 of them were willing to speak on video. The women are now mothers, wives, nurses, bartenders, realtors, hairdressers, and teachers. One is a Hollywood actress. Several have grappled with trauma, depression, and addiction. Some have served time in prison. The first woman who testified at Ghislaine Maxwell's trial was a Hollywood actress. A few did not survive. One young woman was found dead last year in a rundown hotel in West Palm Beach. She overdosed on heroin and left behind a young son. Awful. As part of Epstein's agreement, he was required to register as a sex offender and pay restitution to the 36 victims identified by the FBI. In many cases, the confidential financial statements came only after Epstein's attorneys exposed every dark corner of their lives in a scorched earth effort to portray the girls as gold diggers. Quote, "You beat yourself up mentally and physically," said Jenna Lisa Jones, 30, who said Epstein molested her when she was 14. You can't even stop your thoughts. A word can trigger something. For me, it's the word pure, because he called me pure in that room. And then I remembered what he did to me in that room. This is why we're screaming for justice. There shouldn't be more Jenna Lisa Joneses. Now, more than a decade later, 2 unrelated civil lawsuits, one set for trial on December 4th, this again is in 2018, could reveal more about Epstein's crimes. I will just update you what happened after he died. There was a victim fund that was set up, which I think it had a great deal of money in there. It had a great deal of money. It was designed to compensate the victims. Second lawsuit, known as the Federal Crime Victims' Rights Suits, is still pending in South Florida. It might have resulted from that. I'm not sure. Like in a fight against his estate after he died. Federal prosecutors, including Acosta, not only broke the law, the women contend in court documents, but they conspired with Epstein and his lawyers to circumvent public scrutiny and deceive his victims in violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act. The law assigns victims a series of rights, including the right to notice of any court proceedings and the opportunity to appear at sentencing. Quote, "As soon as the deal was signed, they silenced my voice and the voices of all of Jeffrey Epstein's other victims," said Wild, who is now 31. This case, and I guess now she's like 37, this case is about justice, not just for us, but for other victims who aren't Olympic stars or Hollywood stars. In court papers, federal prosecutors have argued that they did not violate the Crime Victims' Rights Act because no federal charges were ever filed in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida, an argument that was later dismissed by the judge. Meaning it was a non-prosecution agreement, not a plea agreement. Despite substantial physical evidence and multiple witnesses backing up the girls' stories, the secret deal allowed Epstein to enter guilty pleas to 2 felony prostitution charges. Epstein admitted to committing only one offense against one underage girl who was labeled a prostitute, even though she was 14, which is well under the age of consent, 18 in Florida. I'm sorry, there's no such thing as a 14-year-old prostitute. There's no consent. She was taken advantage of twice, first by Epstein and then by a criminal justice system that labeled a 14-year-old girl as a prostitute. Just outrageous how they minimized his crimes and devalued his victims by calling them prostitutes, says Yasmin Vaff, a human rights attorney. There is no such thing as a child prostitute. Under federal law, it's called child sex trafficking. Whether Epstein pimped them out to others or not, it's still a commercial sex act. And he could have been jailed for the rest of his life under federal law. Now, notice we haven't been talking about the third-party depravity. So far, we've been focusing on first party, what he was abusing for himself rather than having third parties abuse him. It would be easy to dismiss the Epstein case as another example of how there are 2 systems of justice in America, one for the rich and one for the poor, but a thorough analysis of the case tells a far more troubling story. A close look at the trove of letters and emails contained in court records provides a window into the plea negotiations. There's no reason that our current FBI should only have a window. Pam Bondi should know exactly what happened when this deal was signed. Revealing an unusual level of collaboration between federal prosecutors and Epstein's legal team that even government lawyers in recent court documents admitted was unorthodox. meaning collaboration, that there's a working together between Epstein's team and prosecutors. Acosta in 2011 would explain that he was unduly pressured by Epstein's heavy-hitting lawyers, Lefkowitz, Harvard professor Alan Dershowitz, Jack Goldberger, Roy Black, former U.S. Attorney Guy Lewis, Joe Lefcourt, and Kenneth Starr, the former White House special prosecutor who investigated Clinton's liaisons with Monica Lewinsky. That includes keeping the deal from Epstein's victims' emails show. So part of the deal was you don't tell the victims so they don't show up. Quote, "Thank you for the commitment you made to me during the October 12th meeting," Lefkowitz wrote in a letter to Acosta after the brief meeting in West Palm Beach. He added that he was hopeful that Acosta would abide by a promise to keep the deal confidential. "You assured me that your office would not contact any of the identified individuals, potential witnesses, or potential civil claimants and the respective counsel in this matter," Lefkowitz wrote. In email after email, Acosta and the lead federal prosecutor, A. Marie Villafana, acquiesced to Epstein's legal team's demands, which often focused on ways to limit the scandal by shutting out his victims in the media, including suggesting that the charges be filed in Miami instead of Palm Beach, where Epstein's victims lived. On an avoid the press note, "I can file the charges in district court in Miami, which will hopefully cut the press coverage significantly. Do you want to check that out?" Villafana wrote to Lefkowitz. They're working and offering the defense. "Hey, I can do this even more secretly. Let's do it even more secretly." That's what the district attorney was writing. Disgusting. Federal prosecutors identified 36 underage victims. This is as of, but none of these victims appeared as sentencing in June 30, 2008. So they knew 36 girls. None of them showed up in the state court of Palm Beach County. Most of them heard about it on the news, and even then they didn't understand what happened to the federal probe that they'd been assured was ongoing. Edwards filed an emergency motion in federal court to block the non-prosecution agreement, but by the time the agreement was unsealed over a year later, Epstein had already served his sentence and been released. And once it's released, it's done. The deal is completed, can't be overturned. The conspiracy between the government and Epstein was really, let's figure out a way to make the whole thing go away as quietly as possible. Why would they do that? Why? And never consulting with the victims and keeping it secret, it showed that someone with money can buy his way out of anything. Who's the money given to? Is it given to Acosta? It was far from the last time Epstein would receive VIP handling. Unlike other convicted offenders, Epstein didn't face the kind of rough justice that child sex offenders do in Florida state prisons. Instead of being sent to state prison, Epstein was housed in a private wing of the Palm Beach County Jail. And rather than having him sit in a cell most of the day, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office allowed Epstein work release privileges, which enabled him to leave the jail 6 days a week for 12 hours a day. 13 months, of which half the time he's not even there. To go to a comfortable office that Epstein had set up in West Palm Beach. This was granted despite explicit Sheriff's Department rules stating that sex offenders do not qualify for work release. The sheriff, Rick Bradshaw, would not answer questions submitted by the Miami Herald about Epstein's work release. Neither Epstein nor his lead attorney, Jack Goldberger, responded to multiple requests for comment for this story. During depositions taken as part of 24 lawsuits filed against him by his victims, Epstein has invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, in one instance doing so more than 200 times. In the past, his lawyers have said the girls lied about their ages, that their stories were exaggerated or untrue. They were unreliable witnesses prone to drug use, and that came up a lot during the Maxwell trial. In 2011, Epstein petitioned to have his sex offender status reduced in New York, where he has a home and is required to register every 90 days. In New York, he's classified as a level 3 offender, the highest safety risk because of his likelihood to reoffend. A prosecutor on the New York County District Court, District Attorney Cyrus Vance, argued that on Epstein's behalf, telling New York Supreme Court Judge Ruth Pickholz that the Florida case never led to an indictment and his underage victims failed to cooperate in the case. So a prosecutor in New York is arguing, let's reduce how bad his sentence is. Let's reduce how bad his classification as a threat is. What the heck is happening here? Pickholz, however, the judge, denied the petition, expressing astonishment that a New York prosecutor would make such a request on behalf of a serial sex offender accused of molesting so many girls. So we have questions for Cyrus Vance. Quote, I have to tell you, I'm a little overwhelmed because I've never seen a prosecutor office do anything like this. I've done so many sex offender registration hearings, much less troubling than this one, where the prosecutor would never make a downward argument like this, she said. What's going on? What's going on? The women who went to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. Now, again, all of this talk here is girls he abused, as far as we know, for his own personal gratification. Not the stuff that the intelligence agency would want him to be doing, you would think. You would think they want him honeypotting third parties for blackmail, extortion, other things like that. The women who went to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion as girls tend to divide their lives in two parts, life before Jeffrey and life after Jeffrey. Before she met Epstein, Courtney Wild was captain of the cheerleading squad, first trumpet in the band, and an A student at Lake Worth Middle School. After she met Epstein, she was a stripper, a drug addict, and an inmate at Gadsden Correctional Institute in Florida's Panhandle. Wild still had braces on her teeth when she was introduced to him in 2002 at the age of 14. Sickening. Sickening. She was fair, petite, and slender, blonde and blue-eyed. Wild, who later helped recruit other girls, because that was what he did, said Epstein preferred girls who were white, appeared prepubescent, and those who were easy to manipulate into going further each time. He wanted girls who looked like they were 10. That's what he wanted. This sick, sick, sick human being. By the time I was 16, I probably brought him 70 to 80 girls in 2 years. She met him at 14. Within less than 3 years, she had brought herself 70 to 80 girls who were all 14 and 15 years old. 70 to 8. This is sickening. Sickening. By the time I was 16, I'd probably brought him 70 to 80 girls who were all 14 and 15 years old. He was involved in my life for years, said Wild, who was released from prison in October after serving 3 years on drug charges. The girls, mostly 13 to 16, were lured to his pink waterfront mansion by Wild and other girls who went to malls, house parties, and other places where girls congregated and told recruits that they could earn $200 to $300 to give a man, Epstein, a massage, according to an unredacted copy of the Palm Beach police investigation obtained by the Herald. Now, again, all of this seems fixated on gratifying Epstein individually. It's sickening, disturbing, whatever. But this is not what you would think that an intelligence agency is looking for. The lead Palm Beach detective on the case, Jeffrey Epstein, said Epstein's operation worked like a sexual pyramid scheme. The common interview with a girl went like this. I was brought there by so-and-so. I didn't feel comfortable with what happened, but I got paid well, so I was told if I didn't feel comfortable, I could bring someone else and still get paid. So as long as I bring someone else, I get paid. And that's what they all did. So he gets to sample one after another. During the massage sessions, Ricari said Epstein would molest the girls, paying them premiums for engaging in oral sex, intercourse, and offering them a further bounty to find him more girls. This is all what came out. This is completely consistent with the testimony that we heard at the Maxwell trial. Ricari, in his first interview about the case, said the evidence the department collected to support the girls' stories was overwhelming, including phone call records, copies of written phone messages from the girls found in Epstein's trash, and Epstein's flight logs, which showed his private plane in Palm Beach on the days the girls were scheduled to give him massages. Again, all of this came out in the Maxwell trial. All of this. Epstein. But again, none of this is third-party abuse. Everything we're hearing about these dozens, 80 girls, whatever, this is all for his personal use. If you ask me, I would say at least 80% of the abuse of minors was for his own personal gratification. That's my best estimate, at the very, if not more. Now, that's in part because he was so abusive individually, this scumball. So abusive. So utterly abusive. But I'll tell you that 80% of this was his own personal gratification. It has to be. He doesn't spend that much time on the island. He spends so much of his time in Florida. Epstein could be a generous benefactor, Ricari said, buying his favorite girls gifts. He might rent a car for a young girl to make it more convenient for her to stop by and cater to him. Once he sent a bucket of roses to the local high school after one of his girls starred in a stage production. The floral delivery instructions and a report card for one of the girls was discovered in his search of his mansion in trash. Police also obtained receipts for this rental cars and gifts, Ricari said. Epstein counseled the girls about their schooling, told them he would help them get into college, modeling school, fashion design, or acting. At least two of Epstein's victims told police they were in love with him, according to the police report. The police report shows how uncannily consistent the girls' stories were, right down to the details of his genitalia. Sick. We had victims who didn't know each other, never met each other, and they all basically independently told the same story, said Ryder, the retired Palm Beach police officer. This is a slam dunk case. You don't need to cut a deal. This is what you call a slam dunk prosecution. Ryder, also speaking for the first time, said detectives were astonished by the sheer volume of young girls coming and going from his house, the frequency, sometimes several in the same day, and the young ages of the girls. Quote, it started out to give men a back rub, but in many cases turned to something far worse than that, elevated to a serious crime, in some cases sexual batteries, he said. Most of the girls said they arrived by car or a taxi, entered the side door. This is exactly what I heard so many times. This is what Carolyn told us, Jane. This is exactly what we heard. Most of the girls said they arrived by car or taxi, entered the side door where they were led into a kitchen by a female staff assistant named Sarah Kellen. Sarah Kellen ended up being the replacement, I think, for Ghislaine Maxwell. After Ghislaine and he got into a split, I think Sarah Kellen is the one. There was some overlap, but she seemed to have taken over Ghislaine Maxwell's role. A chef might prepare them a meal or offer them cereal. The girls, most from local schools, would then ascend the staircase of the kitchen up to a large master bedroom and bath. They were met by Epstein clad in a towel. He would select a lotion from an array lined up on a table and then lie face down on the massage table, instruct the girl to strip partially or fully, and direct them to massage his feet and backside. Then he would turn over, have massage his chest, and this is another thing that he had about the whole pinching, which this is weird, while he would pleasure himself, according to the police. At times, if emboldened, he would try to penetrate them with his fingers or use a vibe on them. Sickening. He would go as far as the girls were willing to let him, including intercourse, according to the police documents. Sometimes he would instruct a young woman he described as his Yugoslavian sex slave, Nadia Marcinkova, who was over 18, to join in. But she was considered too old. We heard from Carolyn said that when she turned a certain age, like 17, she's too old. He wasn't interested anymore. Epstein often took photographs of the girls having sex and displayed them around the house, the detective said. Once gratified, Epstein would take a shower in his massive bathroom, which the girls described as having a large shower and a hot pink and mint green sofa. Kellen, who got married, I guess, and is now Vickers, and Marcinkova, through their attorneys, declined to comment for the story. One girl told police that she was approached by an Epstein recruiter when she was 16 and was working at the Wellington Mall. Over the course of more than a year, she went to Epstein's house hundreds of times, she said. The girl tearfully told Ricari that she often had sex with Marcinkova, who employed strap-on and other toys, while Epstein watched and choreographed her moves to please himself, according to the police. The reason I'm going through this The reason I'm going through this, and it's sick and disgusting and awful, is because we need to appreciate just how monstrous this terrible human being was. I know it's graphic. I know it's gross. I know it's disturbing. I know that I'm sure that hopefully every one of you is nauseated by what we're reading here. The reason we need to do this is so we can appreciate just what a monster this guy was. And so we can appreciate how terrible it is to allow this monster's activities, to the extent that they are now, and the impact that he had on these girls, to the extent that they do relate to third parties, to go unchecked and unaccounted for. That's why I'm going through this. This is awful. Oftentimes, she said she was so sore after encounters that she could barely walk. But she said she was firm about not wanting to have intercourse with Epstein. One day, however, the girl said Epstein was unable to control himself, held her down on a massage table, and penetrated her. The girl, who was 16 or 17 at the time, said Epstein apologized and paid her $1,000 for that one. Most of the girls came from disadvantaged families, single-parent homes, foster care. Some had experienced troubles that belied their ages. They had parents and friends who committed self-deletion, mothers abused by husbands and boyfriends, fathers who molested and beat them. One girl had watched her stepfather strangle her 8-year-old stepbrother, according to court records. Really messed up girls. Many of the girls were one step away from homelessness. We were stupid, poor children, said one woman who did not want to be named because she was never told about Epstein. She never told anyone about Epstein. At the time, she said she was 14 and a high school freshman. We just wanted money for school clothes, for shoes. I remember wearing shoes too tight for 3 years in a row. We had no family, no guidance, and we were told that we were going to just have to sit in a room topless, and he was going to just look at us. It sounded so simple. It was going to be easy money for just sitting there. The woman who went to Epstein's home multiple times said Epstein didn't like her because her breasts were too big. The last time she went, she said one girl came out crying and they were instructed to leave the house and had to pay for their own cab home because he didn't like women. He wanted girls. Sick, disgusting, awful. I had to sit through this trial. And then I sat through the Diddy trial. This is, you don't understand. You're sitting through hours and hours of this for days. Now you understand why it's like, I don't like doing this. But I think it's important from at least this read through for people to understand just the level of depravity here. Can Alex Acosta be disbarred? It's very hard to do that. Probably none of them. 20 years later, probably none of them. Very unethical. Thank you, Mercelichka. Joe, there's video of Prince Andrew waving a young woman out of his New York condo. Same goes for the former Israeli prime minister. Clinton's too. Compromised. Maybe. I haven't seen that. I saw a picture of Bill Clinton like sitting topless in a hotel room with a young girl laying on the bed. She's not dressed inappropriately, but the setting just looks unsettling. This old man sitting topless on a bed next to a girl in a towel. I think he's wearing a towel in it. Some girls told police they were coached by the peer recruiters to lie to Epstein about their ages and say they were 18. Epstein's legal team would later claim that even if the girls were under 18, there's no way he could have known. Yeah, he had every way of knowing. He threw them out if they were too old. However, under Florida law, ignorance of a partner's age is not a defense for having sex with a minor. Walt said he was well aware of their tender ages because he demanded that they be young. Quote, he told me he wanted them as young as I could find them, she said, explaining that as she grew older and had less access to young girls, Epstein got increasingly angry with her inability to find him the young girls he desired. Quote, if I had a girl to bring him at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, then that's how many times I would go a day. He wanted as many girls as I could get him. It was never enough. Epstein's scheme first began to unravel in March 2005 when the parents of a 14-year-old told Palm Beach police that she had been molested by Epstein at his mansion. The girl reluctantly confessed that she'd been brought there by 2 other girls, and those girls pointed to 2 more girls who had been there. By the time detectives tracked down one victim, there were 2 more 2 and 3 more to find. Soon there were dozens. We didn't know where the victims would ever end, Ryder said. Eventually, the girls told them about still other girls and young women that they had seen at Epstein's house, many of whom didn't speak English. That led Ricari to suspect that Epstein's exploits weren't just confined to Palm Beach. Because how are you finding non-English speakers in Palm Beach? Police obtained the flight logs for his private plane, found female names and initials among the list of people who flew on the aircraft, including the names of some famous and powerful people who had also been passengers. A newly released FBI report shows that at the time of the non-prosecution deal was executed, the agency was interviewing witnesses and victims from across the U.S. The probe stretched from Florida to New York to New Mexico. He has properties in each of those states. The report was released by the FBI in response to a lawsuit filed by Radar Online. It was made available to the Bureau's website after the Miami Herald and other news organizations submitted requests. One lawsuit still pending in New York alleges that he used an international modeling agency to recruit girls as young as 13 from Europe, Ecuador, and Brazil. Girls lived in a New York building owned by Epstein, who paid for their visas, according to the sworn statement of Maritza Vasquez, the one-time bookkeeper for MC2, the modeling agency. Mike Fiston, a former Miami-Dade police sergeant who was also a homicide investigator and member of the FBI Organized Crime Task Force, said the FBI had enough evidence to put Epstein away for a long time, but was overruled by Acosta, who said, nope, we're not doing it. Some of the agents involved in the case were disappointed by Acosta's bowing to pressure from Epstein's lawyers, he said. The day that a sitting U.S. attorney is afraid of a lawyer or afraid of a defendant is a very sad day in this country, said Fiston, who was a prime investigator for Edwards. In 2009, Epstein sued Edwards, alleging that Edwards was involved with Rothstein, and I don't care about that. The lawsuits back and forth. Florida State Senator Lauren Booker, a survivor who has lobbied for tough offenders, said Epstein's case should have served as a tipping point for criminal cases involving crimes against children. Where's the righteous indignation for these women? Where are the protectors? Who's banging down the doors of the Secretary of Labor or the judge or the sheriff office in Palm Beach County demanding justice, demanding the right to be heard? Assistant U.S. Attorney Anthony Villafana said the prosecutors used their best efforts to comply with the Crime Victims' Rights Act, but exercised the prosecutorial discretion when they chose not to notify the victims. The reasoning went like this. The non-prosecution deal had a restitution clause that provided that the girls a chance to seek compensation from Epstein. Had the deal fallen through necessitating a trial, Epstein's lawyers might have used their prior restitution clause to undermine the girls' credibility as witnesses by claiming they had exaggerated Epstein's behavior in hopes of cashing in. So you say, why didn't we tell the girls about it? Because we were afraid they would come in and exaggerate and that would hurt their case? What? Acosta has never fully explained why he felt it was the best interest of the underage girls and their parents for him to keep the agreement sealed, or why the FBI, I don't know why the court went along with it either, or why the FBI investigation was closed, even as recently released documents show the case was yielding more victims and evidence of possible trafficking conspiracy beyond Palm Beach. When Acosta was questioned about it at his confirmation to become labor secretary, he said, at the end of the day, based on the evidence, professionals within the prosecutor's office decide that a plea that guarantees someone goes to jail, that guarantees he register as a sex offender generally, and guarantees other outcomes is a good thing. That's hot garbage. Acosta said it was a decision not to prosecute. Dianne Feinstein, in opposing Acosta for labor secretary, and if I was in there, I would have opposed him also. Noted that his handling of a case involving trafficking of underage girls when he was a U.S. attorney suggests he won't put the interests of workers and everyday people ahead of the powerful and well-connected. This guy should be in jail. The real crime with the Catholic priests was the way they covered up and shielded the priests. The orchestration of power by men only is protected as long as everybody agrees to keep it secret. This is a story the world needs to hear, and that's why I shared it with you. That's why I shared it with you. I just wanted to check out one more thing before I let you guys go. Question I'm asking Grok, because I remember I've seen it a lot of times. Was about Acosta, which I asked, when did Acosta say he was pressured because of intelligence agencies? Alexander Acosta reportedly made the claim that he was told to back off from prosecuting Epstein because Epstein belonged to intelligence. That's the phrase, belonged to intelligence, during interviews with the Trump transition team in 2017, when he was being considered for the position of labor secretary. The statement was not made publicly at the time, was later reported by the Daily Beast on July 10, 2019, citing a former senior White House official who recounted Acosta's comments during the vetting process. How is it Pam Bondi has not talked to this guy yet? Explain. Do the math for me. Do the math for me. I'm sorry, this is inexcusable. This is inexcusable. I'm sorry. We need to keep the pressure up. There's been reporting to that effect. Let me say, there's been reporting to a lot of effects in this case, not just now, but over the years. And I would hesitate. When asked if he was ever told Epstein was an intelligence asset, he neither confirmed nor denied the statement, saying, there's been reporting to that effect. And let me say, there's been reporting to a lot of effects in this case, not just now, but over the years. And I would hesitate to take this reporting as fact, and added that he couldn't address it directly due to Justice Department guidelines. Yeah, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. I want Alex Acosta up here. I wanted him to testify before Congress. That's what I want. I want Alex Acosta to testify before Congress. You note, by the way, Biden administration never called him up either. Thus, the initial claim was reportedly made in 2017 during private interviews and public discussion, and Acosta's non-committal response occurred in July 2019, just before he died. Gross. Rafe from Betty Singley in chat. Hi, Joe. Hubby is a big fan. He had a massive stroke, so needing prayers, please. I have a question, but don't want to ask here. Is there a way of sending you my question? You can DM me. You can DM me at the following pro on X is probably the quickest way for me to see it. You DM me on X. So that's probably the best way. That's what I would recommend. It's at the following pro. And thank you. And prayers for your husband, Betty. I'm so sorry. Stroke is terrible. My grandfather had a stroke when I was 14. It's disastrous. Anyhow, I was asked to look at this video from 3030. Someone recommended that I would appreciate this, which would leave me like 5 minutes of it. So I'm going to take a quick gander at it with you.
Why is Donald Trump
This is the video.
acting the way he is when a reporter dares to ask a question? Explain to me what's in it for Donald Trump, who generally doesn't like keeping secrets, to do that.
So I was told to go to 3030.
To watch the passion that he has, that he knows there's stuff there.
Why can't he release it? What's the point of the gap? Why?
I don't understand, the old expression, when the reason for the rule fails, then the rule itself fails. That would seem to be the case right now.
Well, what was the reason?
I guess to protect, it's always to protect the legal definition of victims. I get that.
So this
But
was
you
in
know how he
discovery, and one of his
solved that?
was this
Yeah.
yeah.
I believe it was in discovery, and I'm telling you that nobody would know better than Alan what's going on here, because he had defended them. He probably had to
He's referring to Alan Dershowitz here.
take discovery under a protective order, because you can't do any federal criminal defense anymore unless you take stuff under a protective order. Everything's always released. Here you go, you can have it, and then if you release it, God knows what's going to happen to you. And my guess is that he got discovery during his battle royale, trying to clear himself. And so that's, like I said, I haven't talked to him about it right now post this release, but my best guess is he's got discovery that's under a protective order of some kind that he can't release, and he's frustrated. You can see the frustration. It was palpable on his post.
You know, I will say this. I understand on the one hand why you would want to protect people where there's no evidence of anything untoward, because just the association is just so career ending. Just, you know, it is so brutal, and it happened to Alan Dershowitz. So you could understand.
Absolutely.
So then you could understand if there are just names in passing where
30
there's
times
no
larger.
evidence of anything, that you don't want to release that. You know, but I wonder if there's anything distinguishing some names from other names. And if it really is that we found nothing untoward and there are 34 names, but we are not going to release them because we have good reason, because of what the impact it would have on their lives, at least that would say something. But they're saying it doesn't exist. Nothing exists. And I just don't believe it.
By the way, instead of saying it's not appropriate, add a couple of sentences.
Right.
It's not appropriate because this would expose or re-victimize, or there was no evidence in support, corroborating evidence.
Right.
Just give an explanation. Don't let it sit out there.
I don't think that would help. Look, at the end of the day, you have to be cops. You have to go after these people. You have to do your own. If the files have been dragged through the mud, find a way. You find a way. You get it done. You get it done. Dig it up. Talk to Alex Acosta. Talk to Ghislaine Maxwell. Talk to these victims. Talk to the FBI agents who were involved in procuring the information in 2007, in 2019. Talk to those people. Whoever was on the file. You could tell who was on the file for that. Talk to them. I don't care if you have to, if they're hostile, so you drill them. Get answers from them. You're cops. Be cops. Joe, YouTube search Prince Andrew Epstein video, Daily Mail, roughly 4 minutes of footage. You won't get a strike for showing. Okay. I'll do that right now. Thank you. Thank you, Marcelechka. YouTube. What do I got here? Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew Epstein. Daily Mail. Found it. Thank you. This is what Marcelechka was asking me to share with y'all. It looks so little. It's probably New York. That looks like Upper East Side. That's supposed to be Prince Andrew. He doesn't look like he's wearing much. Are you gonna show us in slow-mo? I don't know that you can know that's Prince Andrew. I mean, it could be him. Could be him. I don't know that you can know that. But let's see what else I got. You guys are awesome. That's Sarah Kellen. It looks like Prince Andrew, I think. I don't know that I would say it definitively, but I can understand people saying that's Prince Andrew. No. Okay, let's see. Let's pull up pictures of Prince Andrew here. Yeah, I think that's him. I think that's him. I think it's him. I think it's a fair call. So we find him and Yeah, that's him. That's the famous picture of him with Virginia Giuffre and Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah, I'm gonna accept that. That's sickening. Thank you, Mercilachko. Joe, remember to raid Jim's stream tonight, please. I already set it up. I am sending you all over to Jim Tells You. He's a frequent co-host of my show over here. And so I'm going to just redirect you over there to his post game, and I am bringing my plane in for a landing. My key thing is this. Know this. We know very little. I basically read to you the best report there. That report talks mostly, almost exclusively, about girls servicing Jeffrey individually. Now, we have reason to think there's a list, primarily because of the plea deal that he got, and because this is consistent with way intelligence operations, and that's why and there have been a few claims from a few women about that there were these parties, that there were parties where they attended stuff. Not even so much on the island, really, not even so much on the island. And I was talking to a group of people yesterday on Spaces, yesterday being Sunday on Spaces, and they were saying that the women at the island were not like these Palm Beach girls. They were actually Russians. And that there's, on Substack, there's all this different documentation to establish that they were Russian girls, which would make you think that this was a Russian operation. And I don't know that it was, but I'm just saying, if you ask me, my gut says there's definitely a list. Between Alan Dershowitz saying he's seen the list and holding his hand up there, swearing that there's a list, and the claims of different lists, different people there, I think there's a list. And I think that for one reason or another, the Trump administration is refusing to dig into this and hoping that everyone will let it go away. But it will not die. This story will not die. And it's hard for a lot of people to even talk about other things. And the more they fight on this, supposedly Lara Trump came out and said there's going to be a new release that's coming out. The more Trump fights on this, the worse it looks for him. And again, I don't think he partook in any of this abuse. He threw Jeffrey Epstein out of his house, and then for talking to underage girls, and they had a big fight over that, and then and that's what Jeffrey Epstein supposedly told his cellmate in the days before he died. So I don't think that Trump is personally involved. But there is a cover-up happening here. And the fact that a cover-up can still be happening is very, very, very disconcerting. It's very, very, very disconcerting. Now, look, maybe someday we hear that whoever it is that is putting pressure that's leading to this cover-up, that there's a whole big FBI sting operation, that they're trying to, dig into them and expose them, and then they're going to be arresting them, and then we'll hear the full actual Jeffrey Epstein story. I hope that's the case here. I hope, but I have very little. I have very little expectation that is the case, and the only way that this thing is not going to be a permanent stain for Trump, no matter what he does, is if we get some real kind of closure here, and the real closure comes by Cash and Dan being cops, not closing this case, but being cops, putting it together, and then having accountability. That's the only way that this thing will actually close in a way that's comfortable for MAGA. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to MAGA as a result of this. There is a lot of fracturing that's going on. A lot of people want to point fingers. A lot of people want to say, these are the bad guys. These are the bad guys. I don't think we know anything. I'm not willing to rule out anything. And to the extent I think people are definitively ruling in that this is it for sure, I think that they're misguided at best. Misguided. But I definitely think that there's more here. It's very evident. There's a lot more here that the Trump administration, for one reason or another, refuses at the current time to really go into deep dive on. And I don't know what's going to take to break it, but the pressure on the Trump administration is a good thing for Donald Trump. It's good. It's in his best interest for his own legacy to have this thing be resolved. It's in the best interest of the country to have this resolved. because without it, this fracturing that's happening ultimately harms so many more people, because it's going to lead to there being a landslide in favor of the Democrats in midterms if you don't show serious progress here before the next midterms. Serious progress in improving in the way that this whole story reaches its final conclusion. But it's far from over, I think. I really do. I think it's far from over, because there's going to be an ongoing saga. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. You know what they say? Lab meat is not meant is for them, is for they, them. It's not meant for you. No lab meat for you. And do not eat the bugs. Don't do it. Don't eat the bugs. I thank you all for joining me. As always, I'm doing a last final check over here to make sure I didn't miss anything in the ghetto, because the ghetto will get mad at me if I miss something. No, we're good there. You know what that means? That means it's time for me to say good night, you all. And as always, go on speed.